Hi, everyone. Welcome to Decentralized Voices Podcast. I'm Daria, and I'm excited to have Luke as a guest today. Luke is the developer advocate at Celestia, a language enthusiast, a yoga teacher, electronic musician, and someone you definitely want to follow. In this episode, we'll dive into the process of creating developer focused content, building a personal brand in Web3, learning new languages, life in Thailand, and how music builds a well-rounded identity. Stay tuned for insightful conversation. Luke, I'm happy to have you today. Please share about your professional or personal background.
Hey, Daria. Big thank you for having me. First, just straight up, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on the podcast. I think you gave a really good summary of me. I'll add a few more minutes. If I start to go too long, let me know. I've been someone who always loved technology, like way before there really was a lot of technology to explore. I started to code in the 80s. And if anyone else is out there in their 40s, you may remember something called type-in programs. And we had this stuff in the 80s, and it was in the back of computer magazines. Like the last 20, 30 pages of computer magazines would be source code. Because back then, computers were expensive, but software was also really expensive. And I was lucky. My mom had saved up and bought an Apple IIc when I was a little young kid, and she was a social worker. And so, like, buying a computer in those days was definitely like a
big deal.
Huge financial. Yeah, it was a big deal. I mean, it was a huge amount of money, but it was also like, it was a gamble on the future. And I remember my mom saying, like, I don't know what this is, but you seem to really like it. And I feel like this is the future. And she was right. So I learned by typing. I'd had these things called type-in programs. And I had this one friend, not just one friend who was into computers, but I had one friend growing up. And of course he was into computers. So we're the two like nerdy kids in my school. And I'd go to his house after school, or he'd come to my house after school, and we'd sit there with these type-in programs, and he would take turns. He would read out the code to me at my house, and I would type it in, or I'd read it out to him. I had an Apple, he had a PC. And you just kind of learn to code by osmosis. Like there weren't that many coding books. There definitely wasn't, tutorials or YouTube or any of this stuff. The books that existed cost, $80 or $100, which was way beyond my budget. Even the magazines I would borrow from the library, they were couple years old, but it didn't really matter at that point. But so I loved tech. I loved computers. I loved everything about it. I loved figuring stuff out. I loved solving problems. And I loved how there was this mix of in fact, it aligned both sides of my brain. Like there's this analytical part of my brain and this creative part of my brain. And in programming, that they joined together to form something new. And that was it. Like I had a lot of interest growing up, but I kind of always knew I would study computer science. So I went to school for computer science in the 90s. That lasted about a year and a half. I dropped out in 96, moved from Philadelphia to San Francisco, got a job at an internet startup. And I remember thinking at the time, okay, this is it. I'm set. This is going to be my future, blah, blah, blah. And I really did love it. I just loved everything about it. It was exciting to feel. You know what? It's interesting. Like just how I said, my mom didn't know what computers were, but just that they'd be important. That's kind of like how we felt about the internet in the 90s. Like we knew the internet was going to be the future, but like if we're going to be objective about it, who knew exactly what form the internet was going to take, right?
Yeah.
Like some people thought it was going this way. I thought it was going to be Java applets. Like I was coding Java applets, and I'm like, okay, this is the future. Of course, I was wrong, but I was right in the fact that I knew the internet was going to be some part of the world's future, and it was really fun to be part of that. I ended up quitting tech and having a sort of like a big sort of, I don't know, not really a midlife crisis. I was too young for that, but just sort of a BS. I quit and became a yoga teacher and a Pilates teacher. I spent time in India studying yoga and Sanskrit. And that's how I ended up in Thailand. I came here on vacation, met somebody, offered me a job. And then during lockdown, I did that for like 20 years, did a bunch of other stuff too. I started a video production company, did a handful of other things. But during lockdown, I had 6 months where I there's no work, no money, nothing to do. And it was the logical part of my brain sort of caught up with me. It was like, it would say like, Luke, the possibility of another COVID lockdown is definitely greater than 0%. The you really should spend some of this time to think logically about how else you could possibly pay your bills if this shit doesn't get fixed. But of course, shit did get fixed. But during that time, I went down this deep rabbit hole of learning about tech and everything. And that's what brought me to crypto and blockchains. But it wasn't just that, because, honestly, like my first thing, when I got back into tech, I taught myself React and some other stuff. And my first vision of my future was, okay, I'm going to learn React and I'm going to get a job, sit on the beach, banging out websites for $150 an hour. I'm going to smoke a lot of weed and have a very chill life. But then I started to discover blockchains, and I thought, you know what? Like everything that excited me about software in the 90s, I felt those same type of vibes with crypto, now. It was like we all knew the internet was going to be the future. We didn't know exactly what form. And it's the same thing with crypto. Like I'm 100% sure, well, it's not 100%, but I'm very confident that the future of the internet will be built on blockchains. But realistically, who knows what form it'll take? It's I believe it's going to be a certain way, but it's not always the best tech that wins. It's not always the best marketing that wins. It's so many other random factors that drive to a winner. But I know with very high likelihood that it's going to somehow involve blockchains. And just like in the 90s, how we were this very small community of people, like back then we were all scattered around San Francisco. We all went to the same parties, the same events. We all knew the same people, the same VCs. And it's the same thing here. Like now we're scattered across the world, but we all go to the same events. We're all in the same Discord or Telegram groups. We all know each other in this little tight community, especially in the developer relations community, which is it's like a small community within a small community.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's what's so cool. It's cool to feel like there is this zeitgeist. There's something happening, and I'm not just banging out websites to sell some random product online, but I'm really part of something that is going to be the future of computing, and that's a lot of fun. Yes, so that was a long-winded.
Yeah, it was great, and I want to ask you what do you like more about decentralized technologies? Like what excites you in blockchain?
Well, I mean, I like how this is a return to what the internet should have been. That, in the late 80s, early 90s, the internet was open source protocols. It was Telnet, FTP, Usenet, Gopher, Archie. We had all these open source protocols talking to each other. And because everything was open, you had massive amounts of collaboration, things worked together, people built stuff together. Of course, the Facebooks and Metas and Googles just ruined all that and created something different. And so I love how Web3 is a return to the roots of the internet. We're building the internet we should have had. Of course, in the 80s and 90s, it was all universities and military and stuff, so you didn't need a financial component to it because it was paid for through government grants or university grants. So now we need tokens, we need some sort of financial component to pay for these transactions, but we're still building this open source world of open protocols that could communicate and work together. And that's what I like, that it's people talk about owning your data, and I guess that's part of it, but really it's that it's creating an environment that fosters collaboration because everything's open. That's what I love. I love that and I love now that it's not just like sitting under this umbrella of San Francisco. I like that you don't have to live in San Francisco or New York to be part of it.
Can you give an overview of your work at Celestia? And first of all, what is Celestia and what do you do there as a DevRel?
What is Celestia? I think that the older branding, sort of the right curve branding, is that Celestia is a modular blockchain stack, which I guess you could simplify and think about Celestia as Legos, data Legos you can use to launch your own blockchain easily, which is fine, but I think it's sort of nerdy, and it's hard for a lot of devs to think about that because, I don't know, maybe my hot take is that we don't need any more rollups, or we've got enough blockchains and rollups already. But more so than that, I think that what our space needs, what the crypto space needs now, is applications. And so the left curve and sort of the newer branding is that Celestia is a stack for building unstoppable applications. And I think most devs right now working with Celestia aren't actually interacting directly with Celestia themselves. They're building on Eclipse or Forma or Nisha or using Gelato. So they're working with our technology that our partners have built on top of Celestia. And so what we have, so that's basically what Celestia is. It's a stack for building unstoppable applications. And if you look at our roadmap for what's planned this year, there's a lot of cool stuff. But one of the neatest things we have is lazy bridging. And what lazy bridging is going to be basically like seamless bridging of assets between rollups, so that we're creating this ecosystem where they're not just like these siloed rollups that have their own tokens and their own, and TIA on this rollup can't exist on this rollup, but all that's going to become seamless by the end of the year. So we're creating this huge, massive ecosystem, and it's really solving the problem that Ethereum has too, where ETH on Arbitrum and ETH on like somewhere else, is just it's a pain to move through, and it's the same thing right now in Celestia, but it's part of our roadmap and it's going to be fixed this year. So that's what Celestia is. I'm a developer advocate there. So the DevRel team is kind of split into two segments. There's a group of us that do developer advocacy, so which is me and Josh Stein. We work with devs, we do hackathons, we talk about the product, we make videos about the product, docs about the products, teach about the products. And then also in the DevRel team are solutions engineers who like code custom integrations and that sort of stuff. But the work that Josh and I do is very much focused on advocating for developers within Celestia, so people know what the devs want, and also explaining to devs what our products are and working with them to build it.
Yeah, thank you very much for great explanation. So I saw your video tutorials and like other videos for developers, for builders about Celestia. I'm sure that many new DevRels and experienced DevRels, they want to know how to produce such videos like in good quality, well scripted and well planned. Can you please share about your creative process, first of all, and like what do you like more, recording, editing, or maybe some other stuff?
The most important thing for people to wrap their head around when creating video content is that every medium shines in its own unique way. And so some things should be a written tutorial. Some things should be a guide. Some things should be a video. And when I see people go wrong, it's when they kind of just take a tutorial and turn it to a video, or they sort of use the medium to tell the same exact story, when the reality is we're telling very different stories. Video is great because video is a visual language. Video is great for explaining topics. But unless you build some sort of like custom video player that allows you to copy and paste code and stuff, I don't think video is the best for like going over lots and lots of code. And so I think when people are new to the space, they're trying to figure out how to create content, I really encourage people to look at how to use all these different mediums we have in front of us to create a cohesive whole. Most of the videos I make are pretty short, anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. And I try to use that time to do things like explain concepts in very simple ways using visuals. And if it is code, usually what I'll do is use the video to go over the code, but then point people to a longer written tutorial or even just a repository where they can copy and paste the code and go deeper and study it. Because I don't know about you, but I've struggled with so many videos. Like when I was trying to learn something coding from a video, and it's like they show it on screen, but they don't show it for long enough. And I'm old and have bad eyes, so like midway through, I'll be kind of like leaning in, trying to see it, and then you pause it, and if the video is too long, the playhead is hard to scrub. If the video is 5 minutes, it's easy to fast forward, but if you have like a 2-hour video and you want to rewind 30, oh, it's such a pain. And then again, I'm like leaning in, trying to see what it says. So I think that's my biggest encouragement to people, is that think about what different mediums excel at, and how you can use that medium to best tell your story. And when you're using video, think about how you can take advantage of all these visual things. So it's not just us talking, but what sort of graphics can you create? Or if you're not good at creating graphics, then, you can think of how can you use props to tell a story? There's sort of like, there's so many different ways. And as a good model, I think a lot of us can probably think back to professors we had or teachers we had in high school. Like, I'm sure all of us had a good teacher, like an amazing teacher in university or in high school, who would get up in front of the board and would just, captivate, hold everyone's attention in front of them and tell a great story and teach something. And usually these professors were people who had weird creative things, or they'd bring in some strange prop you never heard of and use that to tell the story. And these are people that are great educators. And because we have video in front of us, we can use those same skills to teach a similar concept. Now, you don't have to be great at using After Effects. You could, have a whiteboard that you draw on. Although now with like AI video creation, you can do all sorts of like really, really creative stuff to continue to drive home this point, to teach someone some concept.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a nice, expensive camera. I've got this. I'm on. Using it now is like $3,000, so it's a ton of money. But I also have this, and this is plenty good for most people, right?
Yeah.
This is still a way better camera than anyone could have bought, 10 years ago for many thousands of dollars. So I don't want people to feel like they have to spend tons of money. In fact, even this microphone, I use this. This is an amazing microphone. It cost me like $150. See, I'll show you here. It clips on my shirt. It's a little magnet. It has an attachment to attach to the phone or to the camera, and it has great audio quality. And I think that combined with a phone is all the tech people really need. You don't need to spend lots of money, but you need to really spend time thinking about how to use video to educate people. Another thing I find really helpful is to watch lots of tutorials on YouTube outside of crypto, because what you'll find is there's a tendency of like certain tutorials that teach a certain thing all look kind of the same. Coding tutorials have this little face in the corner. Cooking videos are one way. Synthesizer videos are another way. But if you start to watch all these different like subcultures of YouTube learning, you'll get inspiration and ideas from other people. And so even though maybe synthesizer videos always look the same, but they might be doing things that aren't happening in coding videos. So if you like have this palette of ideas to pull from, and you can get that through just studying different types of learning.
What kind of content you think is more efficient to teach others? Like articles, videos, or maybe personal presentations like public speaking, how to measure it? Because I'm sure that many DevRels want to understand what can work for what.
I think that the bigger point is like, what do we need? And we need content that appeals to a variety of different learning styles. And, we talk about trying to expand the pie and getting more than 20,000 devs in this crypto space. And how are we going to do that? What are we going to do to pull people in? And I think one of the main things we need to do is really take the time to understand that different people learn in different ways. There are super nerdy people who learn by just reading docs. And there's a type of person that just loves to read. But I kind of think those people are already taken care of. And those people who can like learn all about stuff just from reading the docs, they're already coding in this space, or they already have the materials we need. But there's a lot of other people who can be amazing devs that just have different learning styles, that might learn in a more visual way, or people that need content that's not in English, or people that need content that doesn't assume a huge doesn't assume they've been in this space since Satoshi. Material that speaks to these different categories of people. And because that, I think that's why we need different types of DevRels or dev advocates. For the most part, unless you're like someone with an education degree who's really studied how to create this different types of content, we're most likely going to create the type of content that we resonate with personally. And so when protocols start to hire DevRels from really different backgrounds, they might have some CS graduates, they might have some self-taught people, that have all these people who've approached learning in different ways. Those people are going to create the type of learning content they most resonate with. And then that's going to speak to a whole new generation of developers entering the system. So I really would encourage people to, especially in the beginning, to not feel like they need to create a certain type of content because somebody else has done that, but really think about what's the type of content they wish they had when they were first getting into the space, and then create that content. Because, yes, we have different learning styles out there, but it's not like there's 4 billion different learning styles. There's kind of like 4 or 5 different learning styles. And as long as we start creating lots of content that speaks to that, we're instantly going to have more and more devs in our space.
Yeah, thank you very much. So let's talk about personal branding. How important personal branding in Web3, and did you see that builders connect more with technology because of personal brand of educator or developer advocate?
I try not to think about it too much. And I know like it's a thing now, personal branding. And maybe, so I did a lot of things over the last 20 years, but one of the things I did, I ran a YouTube channel. Like it was just all about travel and like language content. But we built it up to like 650,000 subscribers. We did really well with it. And I think I have a bit of PTSD from it because towards the end when I just grew to hate it, it was just like, it just got really difficult. It was a lot of work, always trying to figure out new things, always trying to stay ahead of people, always thinking about our personal brand and all that stuff. So I probably maybe have some PTSD from those days, but I think, so maybe I don't really think about my personal brand too much, or maybe it's because, I'm almost 50 now and I feel like whatever my brand is what it is. But I don't want it to scare away people too, because when you talk about having a strong brand, I think people instantly equate that with having a strong following on X. And there's a lot of crack, 100X DevRels who have only a couple thousand followers on X. So I don't think that really matters. To me, the only thing that really matters is that you need to put your ego second and really care about the builders so that it's not out there saying, okay, I'm Luke, and like always pushing me, but rather saying, okay, I believe in the stuff we're doing at Celestia. I'm bullish on our work. I'm bullish on the protocol. I think it's an important technology. And I want to work with builders to build products on top of that. And I want personally to kind of fade away into the background and be the person supporting the builders, helping the builders achieve success. So I guess it is having a bit of a personal brand, but it's also stepping back and saying my ego comes second and the ego and the builders come first. And then just, I think, being nice, like genuinely wanting to help people, knowing how much of a struggle it can be when you're building a startup and knowing how difficult that is and saying, okay, we're here to offer help and support to you. I guess, I don't know if that's totally answered your question, but yeah, I
think it's a great answer because I wanted to add that many people perceive personal branding. It sounds like some kind of toxic thing, like you mentioned, like me, and like many followers on X or somewhere else. But personal brand is when people think something about you. And it doesn't matter how many followers you have. I really like your approach to be authentic, to be genuine, to be like honest with yourself, first of all, and with others, and like give value. I think that's the things that build your personal brand. And because it's about person, but not in bad way, like pushing this person. I see many people, as you mentioned, they don't have like many followers on social media, but people know them. When people meet them, they remember them, they know them, and they follow them at some events or at some group chats or somewhere else. So they definitely have this personal brand.
Yeah, I think if people were to say one thing about the DevRels at Celestia, I'd want them to say, Celestia cares about its builders. Celestia is invested in the future of their builders. I think if people said that, I am super happy. And I think Josh and I have achieved what we're trying to achieve. And caring means creating the right content for them. It means following up with them. It means working with them to get their products out there, promoting their products, all of that. But I think if people said that about me, I would be very, very happy.
I'm sure that people say this about you.
Yeah, thank you.
So as we discussed now, you're deeply community driven and you always support and mentor many people. So what mindset should a DevRel have to succeed in the Web3 space and to be such supportive and helpful person?
I think the mindset is really to be a type of person who loves learning to begin with. Yeah, that's it. It's this mindset of just to love learning and to realize that we live in this golden age of education where education is, I wouldn't say completely democratized, that there's still some barriers, like generally linguistic barriers. But for the most part, the stuff you can learn now using, as long as you have a cheap Android phone that costs maybe $30. I don't know where you are, but like here in Thailand, you can get for not even that, for $20, you can go into a 7-Eleven and buy a nice Android phone with a big screen. And that is your gateway to education and learning. Like you can
Oh,
learn.
nice.
Oh, yeah, it's really wild. I had this moment I was about a year ago. I was coming home from some event late at night. It was like 11 p.m. And I was walking outside. There was some construction going on. They do construction on the roads here at night. And one of the construction workers was taking a break. And I looked over him, and he was probably, I don't know, 18, 19 years old. He was wearing flip-flops, which is, a lot of construction workers just wear flip-flops here. But he was sitting on the curb playing video games on his phone. And it struck me like how that was just such an image that you never would have seen before, that somebody who couldn't afford work boots, but he still could afford this amazing, powerful computer that he was playing video games on,
Yeah.
or maybe accessing education on. But he could afford it because this stuff has become virtually free. You can get this stuff for $20 now. And because education has been so democratized, we live in this golden age where anybody can learn virtually anything. I'm not saying, be a doctor or an engineer, some things you need school for, but so much of what we're doing in our space, you can learn for free, right?
Yeah.
And so when you think about what makes a good DevRel, it's somebody who just has this passion and love for learning things. And as long as we love to learn, we're going to do everything possible to make it easier and easier for people to learn how to be a blockchain developer. Because it's definitely not, if you want to learn how to be a JavaScript, TypeScript, React guy, there's so many easy pathways. You could pay for a course or learn online, but you have all these, it's pretty easy to do. But if you want to become a blockchain developer, it's not so much that it's hard. It's more that it's just confusing. It's like, where do you go? What do you do? What's this? Like there's just so much to learn, and there's conflicting information and old information. By old information, I mean sometimes like last week, sometimes stuff changes every couple of weeks, but it doesn't get updated. So it's definitely a confusing space to be in. But if you love education and you love learning, you're going to make it easier and easier for people to learn. And that's how our space is going to grow.
Before DevCon in Bangkok, you published a guide about the city, like what to do, what to not to do. And it was really blast. And I read it, and many people did the same, and it was very helpful. Why did you move to Thailand, and how did you change your perspective on life and work and people relationships?
How old was I? It was 2025. I went to India to study yoga and Sanskrit. I had bought a ticket to India for 2.5 months, but my course I was taking was only 2 months. And my plan was I thought, well, I'd have the course will be over. I'll have 2 weeks. I'll go travel around India some. And then I had this friend, a Thai friend of mine, a guy, I used to live in San Francisco, and this guy I knew from San Francisco, he had moved back here to live with his mom. And I was in India, and he said, hey, why don't you come visit me in Thailand? It was right after the tsunami. So he's like, oh, stuff's really cheap here. You can stay in my condo. I'll take you around. India and Thailand is still like 4 or 5 hours away, but it's much closer than Thailand and LA, where I was living at the time.
Yeah.
So I just came here. Like I thought it'd be a fun 2-week vacation. I was teaching yoga in LA. So I went to a yoga studio that he took classes at. I met a woman who owned the place, and she offered me a job. And I thought it would be like a fun, like 1 or 2 year first time living overseas, learn a new language, learn a new culture, do it for a couple of years. And then I just stayed for 18 years, or 20 years really. It's been 2005. And I fell in love. I think what really grabbed me in the beginning was how it was this mix of newness, but also comfort. Like I had just come from India, and India in 2005 was very different from everything I knew. But I got to Thailand, like it was so different. Like the culture, the language, everything was so radically different. But I also could go see a movie in English. I could find clothes that fit me. I could go get pizza or pasta or falafel or Indian food. So I could get all these things that made life easier, but I was still challenged by all these things that make life that were just, so completely new and everything. And that's what really drew me in, excited me about the place. I loved studying the language. I loved how people said it was impossible. Like people just sort of, now there are a lot of foreigners that speak the language, but I think back then they just had this impression that it was impossible for foreigners to learn the language. I dropped out of school in the US. I went to school for computer science and dropped out after a year and a half. But I'd always told myself that I would get a degree someday as like just a fun personal challenge. And so when I was living here, I found a Thai university that let me enroll in a Thai language studies program. So I ended up getting a bachelor's in Thai language studies, which was fun because I studied literature, language origins. I was the only foreigner in the program. It was like me and all these other 20-year-old Thai kids studying traditional Thai literature and poetry and all this neat stuff. So I just kind of fell in love with the country. I met my husband here. We've been together 10-ish years, 12 years. I forget, but yeah. So much. I mean, I'm 48 now and I lived here 20 years, going on half my life. I've been here. I was excited when DevCon happened because I felt like there's so much of Thailand that tourists miss in the beginning. Or, people have this perception that Thailand is all like everything from Hangover Part 2, or Thailand is like a mess, and all that stuff is part of Thailand. Like, of course, that's all based in reality, but there's so much more to this amazing country. And I was really excited to write that travel guide and share it with people, that that is this amazing, wonderful country that now has become a great destination for, nomads or devs or all this stuff. Like visa wise, it's very easy to stay here long term. It's very affordable. I spent 2 years nomading. I left when I got this first job in crypto. I'm like, okay, let's go explore the world. Spent time in Chile, Argentina, Spain, lots of places, and had a great time. But I don't know, it kind of reminded me how much I love Thailand too. It's just it's a great country. Yeah, very, very affordable, which just makes it easy if you're starting a company or something too.
Yeah, all my European friends were like, okay, I can get twice or even 3 times better quality on anything. The hotels, food, taxi, like everything is much better. And what I liked the most, I think, about Thailand, no, 2 things. First, friendly people. Maybe I was lucky, but in all the touristic places, in all places we visited, people were helpful, friendly, and like very positive compared to European faces. And the second one, I like that Thailand is fast growing, and you see this very big contrast between like suburbs and old buildings and these skyscrapers and very modern buildings, very modern architecture ideas. And like this kind of mix, it gives you feeling that everything is growing and developing. You feel like you're growing together with everything.
It's one of the reasons condos are so affordable here, because there's just a supply glut. It's very easy to get a condo here, but it's just, when I first moved here, the SkyTrain had been open 3 years and the underground subway had just opened. And I think in 20 years, we've had something like 50 or 60 stops open up and multiple lines. Like, I mean, you see the power of a centralized government. I mean, it's a democracy, but it's also a centralized government that's able to push through things very, very quickly. It's not like Europe where you have environmental reviews and these reviews and, all this sort of stuff just gets pushed through if you have money. But you see how that leads to really fast growth and construction. Yeah, and this amazing city that has this, I don't know, it has this vibe and this energy that sometimes I hate it, sometimes I love it, but it's definitely got its own very unique, special feeling.
I agree with you, and I definitely want to come again to Thailand and explore it more. So yeah, maybe
Please
next
do.
year.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know that you have studied like 10, 15 languages to different levels. It's very impressive. And please tell, how do you study these languages and what is your approach to study these languages?
I love how languages are a gateway towards culture, and they're a gateway towards understanding that it is so much for so many things. And I'm not talking about physics or math or any of this other stuff, but like that for so many things that truth is a function of perception. And it's that what one culture holds to be true can be very different from what another culture holds to be true. It's like, let's think of something very basic. Like in the US, if you're a 25-year-old male living with your parents, people think you're a lazy fuck. In Thailand, truth of a 25-year-old male living with his parents is viewed through different cultural lenses. And so that same thing simultaneously has two different truths, right? And that's one of the things I love about language is that through language, you start to understand culture and you start to realize that there are different ways of looking at the world. Another example in Thailand, like in Thailand, we don't usually say, what did you have for lunch? We're more likely to say, what all did you have for lunch? So we put it in plural, what all did you have for lunch? But the subtext of that is, of course you ate lunch with a bunch of friends. Of course you ordered lots of dishes. And of course you shared them, because what crazy person would want to sit at their desk alone for lunch? Lunch is a time to relax and to share and have fun with friends. And that really ties into and points to the fact that Thailand is still, is very much a communal culture in the way that a lot of Asia is. But you understand these aspects of the culture when you see how it's reflected in language. Now we have this whole modern debate on pronouns. And it's interesting because I feel like the only reason we have this debate around pronouns is because English as a language isn't as functionally complete as other languages. Like English doesn't have a gender neutral pronoun.
Yeah.
And because English lacks this feature that other languages have, people had to invent they, them, these, yours, then that pissed off people and annoyed people. I can't understand why anyone would be mad about adding a feature to English that exists in other languages, especially people in our industry. Because people in our industry, we're all about adding new features to this or that. Like we think about stuff and of course language changes and evolves. And once you realize that, I think, tying into pronouns, once you realize that other languages have gender neutral pronouns, it's of course a logical step to think, okay, of course English needs these, let's figure out something that works. Or even Thai actually takes a different approach to pronouns, and that instead of, in English, you impose a pronoun on somebody else. You say, he is doing that, she is doing that. But in Thai, you often speak in third person, like using a pronoun. So I could say, like if I was talking to you, I might call myself older brother. I say, okay, because I think I'm older than you. I would say, okay, like older brother Luke is doing this. And because I imposed that gender on myself, I spoke to myself in that way, then you would know how to refer to me. And it's familiar too. Like if I see like a 60-year-old lady selling fruit on the street, I would call her auntie. But if she referred to herself, she might prefer to be called grandma. So she might refer to herself as grandma, and I'd start calling her grandma. Like I'd push it up a level. But I would generally start at the younger age, for fear of offending her. But if she preferred male pronouns, like I might call her auntie, and she might refer to herself as uncle, and I'd hear her referring to herself as uncle, and I'd start using uncle to refer to him. But it's not saying that that's different. It's not saying that Thai is the right way and English is the wrong way. It's just that Southeast Asian languages do this, at least the ones I've studied, allow you to express small aspects of gender yourself instead of having it imposed on you. And that's just another thing when you start to study languages, you realize that, okay, this is another feature that English doesn't have. And maybe this debate we're having now is really just about bringing English up and making it feature complete.
Yeah, it's very interesting. What languages do you know? Can you name them? Like Thai, Spanish?
Yeah, I mean, English, of course.
Yeah.
In high school, I studied a lot of French and Spanish. And then, of course, I've got my bachelor's in Thai. I lived here for 20 years. So Thai is definitely my after English, the language I speak the best. I minored in Japanese in university. So I've kind of forgotten a lot of it. I was just there and it came back to me a bunch, but I forgot a lot of it. And also because I did a bachelor's in Thai language studies, there were 2 tracks you could take at university, like the literature track or the language origin track. And I went language origins. So I studied a lot of Sanskrit, Pali, and then a lot of other like antique writing systems. That's sort of where led to the Thai writing system. This was fun. It was just a general bachelor's I did. So everybody had to pick, there's a foreign language requirement. Like you had to take 4 semesters of any language. And most people took English as their foreign language because they were Thai kids. But I took Burmese as my foreign language. So I did do 4 semesters of Burmese, Thai, Japanese. And then, I've studied, so I guess French, Spanish. I've studied a lot of Lao, but Lao and Thai are similar in the way that Spanish and Portuguese are similar. And I've studied some Italian, some Portuguese. With the Romance languages, it's fun how you can I feel like it's easy to study languages through similarities.
Yeah.
So what I've like in Duolingo, at least if you download it from the US store, it defaults to using English just to learn all these other languages. But you can go into these extra settings and you can change it so you can use Spanish to study Italian or use French to study Italian. And I find that very fun to do because often you may find words that are spelled similar but pronounced different, and so you're more likely to see these similarities when you're using one Romance language to study another Romance language.
Yeah, and Italian, it's similar to English in many words because Latin language and it's like origin of many languages.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Okay, thank you. It's really insightful, and I'm sure that many people will take something from your advice.
What about you? You obviously speak more than English. What do you speak? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, like my native language is Ukrainian, and I speak also Russian and Polish and English, of course. I'm learning French and want to start learn because I was added to the group to learn Spanish because it's very popular and big culture. It's really big culture and very rich culture. So it would be nice to learn more about Spanish language and Spanish culture. I see like Ukrainian and Polish, they're very similar. And Polish has many words from French, and French and English are a bit similar. I see now how it works, and when you know the system, you can apply it to many languages.
It's much easier than most people think. I think you, especially learning more and more, like the more languages you learn, it's easy to say, oh, that's similar to this, and your brain starts to create these pathways. But the other thing you learn is that language is like subservient, I guess, to thoughts and reality. That languages are like, if this is a reality of what we are, language exists below that, and language is able to just explain that using a very limited tool set. And so what we're doing when we're learning different languages is we're learning about how to use a new set of tools to communicate this idea that exists in our head. And to be successful at it, you have to use the tools in the way they're best designed. You know, that if I'm rewriting a program from JavaScript into Python or to PHP, I'm going to structure my code in different ways. I'm not going to create, React components in PHP, or, I'm going to do stuff in different ways. And it's the same thing, like when you're learning different languages, especially if they're different. Like if you're in the Romance group or the Indo-European group, they're kind of the same. But when you like go from English to Thai or stuff, I think one of the ways people struggle is that it's a fundamentally different way to communicate. But that's what makes it so much fun, is that, you learn that, okay, words are just a tool to communicate my idea. And some tools work better with certain ideas. Just again, comparing English and Thai, English is very good for scientific things, how long something happened for, or when it happened.
Or scientific.
Yeah. But Thai is great for talking about your feelings. Like there's so many different words that tie into feelings that just have no literal translation into English. Or to talk about something like Buddhism, with Buddhism developed for a large part in this country. And there's so many words that you just can't translate into English or get translated into a sentence. But because it's translated to a sentence, people have to think about it for a second. Yeah, I know. I keep getting lost on these tangents. I could talk for hours and hours and hours about language stuff.
Yeah, it's very interesting, really. What resources, books, tutorials, or projects can you recommend to aspiring developers, builders, like anyone who are interested in Web3?
I definitely think just learn TypeScript really, really well. I think that's still the most important language in our industry. Learn things like Solidity and all this stuff. But again, don't get so caught up on languages. Computer languages or spoken languages, again, they're just a tool for communicating an idea. But really spend time learning about blockchains. Spend time learning about how they work, how consensus works, how decentralization works. Because once you understand that, if you get that, if you really grok that, it's going to be so easy for you to write code, because you're going to be like, okay, I grok how this works at a conceptual level, so it makes sense that I need to code in a certain way. But if you start from the language, like if you start, okay, just learning the language, then I don't know. I think that's going to be more challenging, and also the languages we use are going to change over time. People use TypeScript, or people want to use Rust, or people use different things, and really like learning a new computer language shouldn't be a huge challenge once you know a couple of them. The other neat thing about our industry now is the breadth of hackathons. Celestia just last week wrapped up we called it our Mammothon, and it was all focused on building applications, no infrastructure, nothing. We had an
God bless.
amazing, yeah, we got some really, really like some crazy games, some neat social stuff, some identity stuff, some really, really cool projects. And each of them, we had 11 winners. They each got $25,000,
Oh,
which
nice.
unless you're living in San Francisco, that's a lot of money. And it's the type of money that actually could, become a startup. If
Yeah,
in
for sure.
Thailand or many parts of the world, 25 grand is enough to bootstrap a startup for months or maybe even a year. So I think that's the other cool thing about our industry is that the barriers to entry are not that big, and it is easy if you're willing to hustle and grind to get a foothold in this industry. I mean, I did it. I was out of tech, out of the US, out of tech, out of all this stuff for 20 years. And I did this course called Road to Web3 with Alchemy, learned a bunch of stuff there, talked to some people on Twitter and got a job. Like it only took me about 6 months of hard work to do it. So I think the industry is easy to break into. It's just different than a lot of other industries. But there are all these ways for people in any part of the world with any background of any age. That we usually think about it to mean 18-year-olds, but it could mean us 50-year-olds too. There is room for anybody in this industry.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, and my final question about music and art in general and their role in your life. I know you play music and I know that you following and creating a lot of things connected with art. How it works for you and what it gives to you in your personal and professional development?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I love art. I've always loved art. It's just really enjoy looking at it. It makes me happy to look at. A lot of stuff like this, I don't, you don't have
Is
to
it
think
your
about what it
picture?
means. No. It's something I bought this like 25, 30 years ago. But it's, I don't paint, but I did do a lot of photography for a while. I've had a lot of like shows and photography galleries and things, but not a long time. Now I mostly just focus on electronic music. For me, electronic music is just a way to relax, to get out of my headspace with computers. I use hardware synthesizers, so I'm not sitting at my desk. I'm not sitting at my computer. It's a great way to for me to mix again those creative and technical parts of my brain in a different way, in a way to be present with something and get away from work. Um, but I think it probably has a lot of like ways I don't even realize that it helps my work. That I think when you're exploring something creative, you're creating something new. I'm creating music. I'm creating a piece that didn't exist before, and that's the same thing you need to do in business too. If you're thinking of a perfect idea, there's so much creativity involved in business. There's so much creativity involved in coding or all these spaces. And if you have that type of brain that's used to like using tools in new and creative ways to create something that didn't exist before, whether you're doing it with synthesizers or a hammer and nails or a paintbrush or with code, you're still creating something out of nothing.
Yeah.
And it's fun to relax and to do it with no pressure to make money from it. That's the thing I love about making music is that I just make music. Sometimes I put it on Spotify, Apple Music, SoundCloud. Most of the times I don't. I don't care how many views it gets. I don't care. I'm not trying to make money off it. And it's so nice to be able to just go in this direction and not care about that stuff. And of course, in business, we have to care about making money and whatever. But you still need to tap into that part of your brain that's all about just creating something out of nothing.
Yeah, I really like this phrase, like creating something from nothing, but actually but you create it from your head. So you have it in your head, and like it's really cool to see how nothing transforms to something because of your idea. I don't know, because of your hands or something.
It's like I've heard some artists talk about how they just get this vision for something and they create that vision. But I'm not that type of person. Like I have a rough idea of something.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah, for
I get
sure.
this in over
Improvise
time.
and yeah. This is how creative process looks like. Like creativity, creativity, yeah. Okay, thank you very much. So I really liked our conversation. If you have any final words you can add.
I don't know. Final words. Have fun. Have fun. I think that's really what we're meant to do here, right? I think we can get caught up in making money or being successful, but that's all just an obsession with the future. Making money is in the future. I might have money, or success is in the future. Our company might do really well, but there's so much fun to be had in the short term.
Yeah.
So much love to be shared, so much fun to be had, and that's what makes life shine. Not to end on a dark note, but I think one of the things about being almost 50 is that you realize that getting old is a gift that not everybody gets. By the time you get to this point in life, you have friends who get cancer or die for whatever random reason, and you realize that sometimes, even though you do everything right, you don't make it to old age. And all we can do is accept that and enjoy this time we have here, have as much fun as possible.
Yeah, thanks. I really don't know what to what to add. It's
I didn't want to get dark at the end there, but
no,
I think it is.
it's
That's
bright.
my
It's
advice.
bright. Yeah,
Have
it's
fun,
bright.
responsible. Don't go into debt. Pay your bills, but also don't save all your money. Sell some of your Bitcoin. Do crazy weird things. Have fun. Take vacations. Take care of your family. Take care of yourself, and try to surround yourself with people you love and you care about.
Yeah,
that's what makes life really, really enriching, is loving, being loved, and having fun.
Yeah, thank you very much for great conversation. Guys, I leave all the links about Luke under this video, so you can go and follow him. And ask questions about his music, about his coding experience, about Celestia, whatever you want. I'm sure that he can answer you and and give advice. So like this video, and see you next time. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you so much. See y'all soon.